I said to her, you know something, Mom, just take care of yourself. Your money is for you to spend. No one should rely on someone's inheritance. And it's okay. The most important thing you could give your kids are love. When you hear about kids and their happiness, I never hear someone say, oh, the kid's happy because their parents have unlimited money. They talk about the stability, the happiness at home. If you're financially secure, your kids are going to be happier because you're happier, because you feel good. And you get to pass that knowledge about money on to them.
Hello, hello. This is Samantha Saxby with another episode of Moms with Benefits. And today we are talking again to Alissa Maizes. Alissa is the founder and the financial advisor to Amplify My Wealth. So she's a licensed attorney, she's an RIA, and she really is all about empowering women and their families with their finances. This is Alissa's second time joining us on the Moms with Benefits podcast. And today we are going to do a deep dive into all things 529. So, Alissa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here again. Really excited.
Yeah. So before we dive into all the 529 questions that we're going to kind of pepper you with that we've gotten from our community, we've known each other for a little bit now, and so I know you're a mom. I know you have two adult children, and they're financially savvy. No shock there based on your role and what you do. But I'd love you to just kind of share with the listeners a little bit about your family side, your mom journey, and sharing why finances has been incorporated into your parenting style.
So I think the most important thing about preparing your kids with their finances is being open and honest with them. And I know a lot of people feel shame or uncomfortable feelings around money, but imagine giving your kids the gift of real generational wealth, which means they have knowledge and the ability to build their own wealth. That's what it's about. So that's what motivated me. And we're talking about college, so I'm going to share some of the things that I did that I think really helped set them up for being financially savvy and helping to pay for college that your listeners can also do. When my kids would receive gifts ever since birth, but you could start it whenever you want, this idea, if it was $20 or more, it got earmarked for college. And that was the beginning of really building their own wealth. And so that was really a game changer for them. And then including them, being honest with them about finances, encouraging them to save money. For instance, my kids each started working and earning money when they were in ninth grade. And I had them open up a Roth IRA, which is for retirement and grows tax-free. And it was great because now, fast forward, they're 21 and they're 23 and they have retirement savings. And it's amazing, and it's grown a lot, and they get to learn how to invest in it. And because it's a retirement account, it does not count towards financial aid consideration. So I think, being that we're talking about paying for college, I think it's important that you think about the impact that money will have, positive or otherwise, when it comes to paying for college.
So let's dive into the 529 topic. So we have had a ton of questions in our Moms with Benefits community on all things 529. So we've done our best to summarize all those questions, the high-level themes of them, and we're going to try to tackle them all today in a kind of a quick and tidy episode for our listeners to feel like they can walk away here knowing what they need to do and think about if they're considering a 529. So first question, it's a big one. What is a 529?
So I'm going to simplify so everyone gets it, because we're not the IRS, we're not the government, we're moms, right? So I want to make sure everyone understands. It's super simple. It is a tax-advantaged account where you could save for college. There are other things you can use for it too, but generally speaking, it is known as an educational savings plan. So Your child can use it to pay for college and related qualified expenses, which you can look up because things change all the time. You can use it for trade school. You can also use it in some states, not all states, but some states you can use it for K through 12, $10,000 a year. And one of the newer things, and this is what I'm talking about, things are always changing, is you can take $35,000 of the money from a 529, and it's over incremental time. You could contribute to the beneficiary's Roth IRA. So that's a retirement account. And the reason why I'm pointing it out is because sometimes people are concerned they're going to overfund their 529. What if I do that? Well, I just shared with you there are lots of different ways you can use it, and you could even give them a jump start to their retirement savings, which usually the Roth IRA has so many limitations based on your income. Here is an exception and a huge gift to get them started. So if there's extra money, you could do that. But the caveat for that is the account, there's like a 15-year rule. So you can't do it today and start transferring the $7,000 every year into the Roth. You have to wait 15 years because they're trying to eliminate that loophole for people who have a lot of money to just open it up today and do it tomorrow. So there's definitely, rules in place to stop things like that, but know that that is available. It's a really amazing new thing from the Secure Act 2.0. And there are other things, like I said, that come up from time to time. It's really important to be up to date and find out how you can use the 529 best for you and your finances.
Super helpful. So can you explain what the tax benefits are for the 529s?
Absolutely. So one tax benefit that everyone potentially has is the same that you have with a 401k, which I feel more people are familiar with a 401k, is that the money that you put in the account can be invested and grow. And while it's in that account and growing, you don't pay taxes on it. And if you use it for qualified expenses, then you don't pay taxes on it then either. So it gives you the ability to accumulate wealth and watch it grow, and then use it for things that they allow you to use it for in, under that qualified plan, the 529. But there's also an added benefit for some people in their state, and this is why it's really important to look into what plans your state might have and see if you qualify for a reduction of paying taxes within your state. Because in some states, they actually do give you a tax break if you contribute to the 529. So it's, you definitely want to do that as opposed to just picking a random plan, which might not offer you that benefit. So I think that's really important. And then the other tax benefit is for people such as a grandparent who might have some wealth that they know they want to pass on to a grandchild to pay for their college. They might be able to also overcome the gift tax that you normally are limited to. So if you give someone more than $19,000 in 2025, you have to pay a gift tax. The person who's giving it needs to pay a gift tax. Well, that rule is different for 529s. You can fund it for more than the $19,000 and not pay the gift tax. So it also gives you that ability to give what you want to give to your grandchild without paying the taxes. So I think that's also something to consider. But you definitely, whatever your thoughts are with this, need to look into your state and what the rules are, because with that, giving more than your gift amount, it varies how much each plan will let you front load into their 529. So definitely look into your state and the specific plan that you're considering before you do it.
Yeah, All right, that makes a lot of sense because every state has one, right? Like they're run by the state. Because one of our questions from our community is, um, do I just Google 529s and like pick the first one? Like who runs them, who owns them? So what's your answer to that question?
So I think the best thing to do is always look at your state plan first because they're most likely to tell you if there are certain tax advantages. If you live in a state where there are no state taxes, there are probably no advantages, in which case you don't have to open up in that state. You might want to consider another state. Maybe you like the investment choices they have. Maybe the investment choices are less expensive, so there's more money that stays in your account. So definitely look at the state first. If there's a tax advantage, that will usually be your first choice. But if that's not the case, then look at other choices, but look at the investment choices, how much they're charging. For instance, if it's a Fidelity or a Vanguard, we know those are names that we equate with lower expense funds, but their 529 might be more expensive. So look at those expenses because we want more money to pay for the school, not to help the different companies that are running the 529s.
So you mentioned that the goal of a 529 is to fund your children's future education or your grandchildren's education, or it's a childhood education savings account. And so that is the intention, but there's a lot of what if scenarios. And so what I heard you say in terms of a Roth IRA is that if you intend to you create a 529, you fund this 529, and for some reason the money doesn't get used as intended, the worst case scenario is really you're funding your child's retirement at this point. Is that accurate?
So you could do that with the $35,000. You can also change beneficiaries. So if you have more than one grandchild or more than one child, you can either open up separate accounts and or you can change the beneficiary. You can also pay for grad school and you could pay for education for yourself. Some people like going back to school. So it's just a matter of changing the beneficiaries. So there are all different ways, but definitely the retirement is more with a wealth building vantage point that there's that option as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And just to clarify for anybody who's listening that the beneficiary is typically like you're going to open the account. If I was a mother, I would open the account for the beneficiary to be for my son. And so when we say change the beneficiary, that means I'm changing it to not my son. I'm changing it to myself for grad school or for his sister or something like that.
Exactly. So you could definitely do that. And then since we were talking about grandparents, one of the benefits of that, we talked about that they could give more than the $19,000. So that could be a benefit for them to be able to gift the money and not pay taxes because a lot of people think about that later in life because they want their families to get more rather than less money. But also, and I touched upon this, is if your child is applying for financial aid, the grandparents' ownership of it will exclude it from financial aid, where if you open one up, Samantha, it will be included.
So this is the grandparent loophole that has popped up on our feeds.
Exactly. The other thing to consider with the grandparents is understanding that if you're not the owner, it is up to the grandparents, not you, what's done with the money. So if something were to happen and they needed the money, they can take it. So, they're the ones who decide if they're, so I would definitely think twice about taking your own money and having someone else open in their name just to, get out of the financial aid application trap because you will no longer control that money. So whoever the owner is, Samantha, if you own it, you have control over that account. That being said, you can designate someone. So if something were to happen to you or happen to the grandparents, for instance, if someone's parents open up an account, they might designate their child in the event that they are no longer there to administer the account. So just some things to think about, because sometimes I shared with Samantha that I knew someone who didn't understand what the ownership meant, and they agreed to something with someone with respect to the ownership of their child's account. And then what happened was that person took the money for themselves, and the money that they thought was set aside for their child's education was no longer there. There was a penalty. So if you do take it out and use it for something other than what it was intended, they do get a penalty, but they still got the money, even though they likely paid that penalty.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great reminder. I mean, it still is a account of money, and so it needs to be controlled by somebody, and then there needs to be a beneficiary of that account. And so there's dynamics to think through as you're thinking about those who's in control of the purse strings, if you will.
Exactly.
And so we get a lot of what if questions, like I shared. So what if I have more than one kid? Should I have more than one 529?
So I think it's good to have more than one 529, because this way, as a mom of two kids, I'd want to be fair and make sure that they each have their money set aside. So if one child decides on the 5-year plan of school and the other one graduates early and goes to grad school, I don't want them to think it wasn't fair, that they got slighted. It gives me more control over it. Maybe one child takes a year off before school and now they're overlapping in school. I'm sure you could go online. It's not that hard to change beneficiaries, but it just might be easier and cleaner this way. And then if down the road you see there's some extra money, it's up to you if you change it to the benefit the other child that's still in school or that wants grad school, or the Roth option as well. So I feel, for me, I like it separate, but for some people it just simplifies it to have one account. I think it's very personal.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would also think that the closeness of age of the children would play a role in. I think because there could be an overlap, like if they're a year apart or 2 years apart, theoretically they could both be in college at the same time. Yeah, so you could only use
Well, you
the
could
account.
change, right. You could change beneficiaries. So if you needed to, you could change them. I'm not sure of the exact rules for
Yeah.
each plan, if they vary, of how, the time frame. I agree. I think it's cleaner, it's easier to have it separate. You know how much money you have for each kid. The other reason why I like the separate accounts is you would want to invest it differently. So even if your kids are 2 years apart, mine are. I like the idea that I would have more cash available for the one that's actually in school than I would for the one who's 2 years out. Maybe if I'm comfortable investing the money, and I know I'm also using some of our cash flow to fund school at the same time, I might be a little bit more aggressive in investing it. That being said, you can also select your investment choices based on when they're going to school. So it will automatically invest, sort of like the target funds that you have for retirement. It's the same concept, where you pick the year that you think they're going to school and it automatically adjusts the investments. So this way you have more cash available, less risky investments the closer you get to school.
I love that you brought that up, because I think when we think about opening an account and choosing investments, that feels intimidating to me. And so, as someone with just a basic knowledge of this stuff, and so the fact that there's kind of the target funds, that it's I pick this plan and it invests on its own, that is preferred in my world.
No, I get it. And I think the other thing is some people might feel more comfortable, but remember, if that money is not there, do you have other resources? Because if you do, then that's fine. Or if it's not going to bother you and you'd rather take the risk because you're like, wow, this is great. We're not paying taxes each year. It's a personal thing, but ideally, not too much risk, especially if you don't have a backup plan. So I think it's important to set your own boundaries that you're comfortable with and that are realistic. And also, it's okay to get an expert to look at it. If you have someone who's already giving you investment advice, even though they're not necessarily managing it, I'm sure they'd look at it and help you out. So don't overlook someone who's already helping you, who knows what they're doing.
Absolutely, that's a great point. All right. The other question we get a lot is how old should my child be when I open a 529 account? So I'm not yet pregnant, or we're not yet expecting. Should I open it? I'm actively expecting. Should I open it? Or I just had a child. Should I open it? What's your opinion on the time frame here?
So, first of all, I think the most important thing is, and I know seems indirect, Samantha, but it's so important, is where are you with your finances? Because right now, someone who hasn't had a kid, or maybe they have a baby or they're about to have a child, they're thinking, why do I have to worry about retirement? I just got out of school, or I'm having a baby. Who needs to deal with that? I'm going to take care of my kid. That's like, I brought them to this world. I'm bringing them. That's the most important thing. And absolutely, you should take care of your kids. You brought them here. You have that responsibility. But your responsibility is also to yourself. And you're teaching your children how to treat themselves and how to be ideally responsible with their own money so they don't have a life of debt. Because a lot of parents have lots of debt. I have a bunch of clients that have debt and they're raising their kids and they want to send their kids to college. So I'm aware of these challenges, but when you're looking to balance the two, you've got to put your future self first. And I know it's hard and your instinct is definitely the kids first, but there are other alternatives to paying for school. There are no loans for retirement. And there's nothing that's going to make your family more stressed out than knowing that you're not okay with your finances, or as adults, that they paid for your education, that your parents paid for your education, and now they don't have enough money. You can't rewind it. So put yourself first, as difficult as that is. Now, if you have the money, even if you don't have kids, or I was telling Samantha, I met this man and he was literally in the dating world, but he knew he wanted kids. He opened up a 529, took advantage of the tax benefits for his state, and he was growing that money and put himself as a beneficiary. And he decided that's what he was going to do. And so, to answer your question, any time is a good time if you can afford it financially, but put yourself first. So if it's increasing your 401k contributions, even if you're like, but Alissa, I only have $50 left a month after that. Or maybe you find one streaming service that you could live without, and that's $25. And take that $25 and put in the 529 every month. As it's invested and reinvested, it will continue to grow. And it doesn't matter where you start or how much you start with, it will make a difference, especially over the time that you're talking about.
Yeah, that guy you mentioned sounds just like a walking green flag. He is ready for marriage and for his future. So I hope he found somebody at this point.
Good point.
So my follow-up question to that, Alissa, is we get a lot of questions on how much should I contribute, and it's hard to give a direct answer there because I feel like what I heard you say is a 529 is part of your broader financial strategy, financial picture, and it has to be something you can afford, and not be at the sake of your own personal financial stability. And so, any number that would be thrown out would only be appropriate if it was done so kind of looking at your financial picture holistically. Is that the stance that you would take?
That is the stance I take. And I have clients who really want to fund a 529, but when we look at their finances and see that there are other things they have to tend to, they pause on the 529. One person that started the 529s and they have a few children and they see that they have some challenges that they want to take care of first, they're actually considering making themselves a beneficiary of one of the 529s and taking $10,000, because you could do this once, for a beneficiary, $10,000 towards paying off some of their student debt because they have student debt. So there are different choices, but much better to tackle this from the beginning so you don't have those challenges. So rather than open up the 529, see if that's something that you could afford to do. And then, like I said, any amount is fine. There is no set amount. Certainly, if you have the money and you're properly, setting aside money for retirement and everything else is okay, then you can look at different college options, look online, you can see what they cost to get an idea if you're thinking definitely state versus private, or maybe you're thinking my kid is going to have to get X amount of dollars and so this is all I'm going to do, whatever it might be. Then you can look at how many years you have until they go to school to figure out, based on the cost, what you expect it to cost, how much money you need to set aside, and then go back and see how you can make it happen based on the expected rate of return and everything else with your investments that you're comfortable with within that account.
Yeah, so you mentioned that your kids got gifts in the beginning and that you required it to go into their college savings, their 529. So how did that story end up?
So initially they were babies. So from day one, I had seen other people, do all sorts of things with their kids' gifts. And as they got older, it was electronics and all these other technological things that kids would outgrow or it would be outdated in no time. So I decided from day one, I was going to set aside all their gifts, like I said, $20 or more. So my kids knew about it from an early age. They knew that's what was happening. And people gave other gifts. So it wasn't like I made them return gifts and get cash for it. They did get gifts. My kids had plenty of things in the house. So initially, I didn't really understand how much would be accumulated in those accounts. And initially, I had it in a regular custodial account. It took me a bit. I don't remember how long until I put it into the 529 so it could be invested and grow. I wish I had done it sooner, but part of me also, because it wasn't something a lot of people did, felt bad. Like, what if I put it in there and something happened? I know historically I had no reason to think that, but there was a part of me that felt guilty. What if they needed the money for something and I had put in the 529? Of course, I could have taken it out and there would have been a penalty if there was really a need. And looking back, I wish I had done it sooner. At the time, I was not a financial advisor, so I also didn't have the amount of knowledge that I have now. So I would definitely say to someone who's thinking about doing is, don't feel bad. If you're setting aside the money, it's good to be in a 529. Why not have it grow? And instead, just don't invest it as aggressively if you don't feel comfortable taking the greater risk.
And it goes back to your point earlier of you're investing it or you're putting it into a 529 because you have deemed that your family can afford that. And so, yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. And so everybody's talking about 529s. Is that the end all be all? Is there any other accounts or strategies you would recommend for education savings?
I think the 529 is the best choice as far as the educational savings accounts, because some of them have different limitations and rules, and some of them are just outdated. And just because they still exist doesn't mean it's the ideal choice. And I do think simplifying your finances. So if you're going to have another account, especially your audience of moms, you have so many responsibilities. You don't need multiple educational accounts other than if you have more than one child and you want to open up one for each of them. So I like the idea of simplifying your finances because I think you'll be more successful in accumulating the wealth, whether it's for your retirement, passing it on, using it for your kids' education. Make it easier for you.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Love it. So, Alissa, thank you so much for diving deep into 529s. I want to end on something, a topic that I know that you're passionate about, and it's this balance between financially investing in your kids and your family, but also being financially stable yourself. And so, can you just, share your perspective on how does kind of securing your own individual future from a financial perspective create a more stable foundation for your children's success?
That's a great question. Yes, it's something I'm definitely passionate about. I know it's hard to balance everything, especially as a mom. I just feel like we're wearing so many hats and it's a lot. And so you might be thinking now she's going to talk about balancing finances. And like I said earlier, of course, you want to put your kids first, but putting your kids first isn't necessarily jeopardizing your future. So, what I would recommend is take an inventory of your finances, take an inventory of your net worth. So, look at what you own and what you owe, and subtract what you owe from what you own to see if you have a positive or negative number. That will give you an idea of what you have, that extra money. And then consider from there how much of the money that you have is already allocated for retirement. How much will you need for retirement? So I know it sounds like a lot to figure out, but a great starting point is to look at your expenses, what they are now. Of course, they might not be the same later, but it's a good starting point. It's most important to start somewhere and then make sure that you will have enough for your future self, because your kids, certainly as adults, don't want to have to worry about you being okay. I remember my mom once said to me, "Why are you so interested in, finances, and you're an only child, you really don't have to worry." And my response to her was, "First of all, you're only 20 years apart from me," right? So I joked around. I said, we could end up being next to each other in the nursing home for all I know. Like, we're close in age, it's possible. And I said to her, "You know something, Mom? Just take care of yourself. Your money is for you to spend. No one should rely on someone's inheritance. And it's okay. The most important thing you could give your kids are love." When you hear about kids and their happiness, I never hear someone say, "Oh, the kid's happy because their parents have unlimited money." They talk about the stability, the happiness at home. If you're financially secure, your kids are going to be happier because you're happier, because you feel good. And you get to pass that knowledge about money onto them. I'm so grateful that my kids graduated. Well, one graduated debt free and he has a job, financially savvy and on top of things. And my other son is also financially savvy. He's graduating in May, also without debt. I wouldn't trade anything for that. I just wouldn't, knowing that they're in a good place and I don't really need to worry about them. It doesn't mean I am still not caring and worrying about my kids, because that's what I do. But it's in a different way, just knowing that they could take care of themselves and I could worry, or not worry, but take care of myself and not be concerned about their debt, because it's challenging enough these days for the younger generations to have enough money for certain things compared to their parents. So why not set them up with the knowledge? That's, to me, what generational wealth is about. It's about giving them the knowledge and the confidence about finances so they can accumulate their own wealth and make great decisions.
I absolutely love that. And I want to just add one phrase that I know I've heard you say a lot with your clients is that you could take out a student loan, but you can't take out a retirement loan. And so just let that be your guiding light as you're making decisions.
Exactly. And there are other choices other than college too. Or you could do community college or get a scholarship. There's so many, or you could work while you go to school and pay for school. So I like that. I appreciate you pointing that out, because yes, there are no loans for retirement.
Well, thank you so much, Alissa, for diving into this topic. I'm super excited to share this with our listeners who have been, eagerly asking us all things 529. So thank you so much for sharing your perspective.
And thank you, Samantha, for having me.